Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Bridget Maloney, and I'm the Managing Director of GEDI, which is the gateway for enterprises to discover innovation at the University of Waterloo. Before we begin our webinar, we at the University of Waterloo first want to acknowledge that we live and work on the traditional territory of the neutral Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee peoples. The University of Waterloo is situated on the Haldimand Tract. It's the land promised to the Six Nations that includes 6 miles on each side of the Grand River. I'm very pleased you could join us for this month's 30 Minutes with the GEDI Exchange webinar. I'm keen to introduce you to the Waterloo Commercialization Office, also known as WatCO, and a GEDI Exchange member company, Evercloak, to discuss commercializing the intellectual wealth at the University of Waterloo. The GEDI Exchange supports the success of startups and scale-ups affiliated with the University of Waterloo, and it actively promotes collaboration among its members, which are both large and small companies, and the university. So more on that later. Today we'll focus on one approach to commercializing the intellectual wealth at the University of Waterloo. And for that, I'd like to welcome Scott Inwood, Director of the Commercialization Office, which is also known as WatCO. And in a moment, he'll introduce himself before addressing that theme. And I'd also like to welcome Evelyn Allen, CEO and co-founder of Evercloak. Momentarily, she'll introduce herself, how she's worked with WatCO, and what she's experienced in the business world with the commercialization of a new technology out of a university. And then at the end, we'll go through audience questions. So throughout this webinar, please send your questions via the WebEx Q&A. You can click on the Q&A in the bottom right corner of your screen and just select all panelists before sending. I wanted to let you know that this webinar is being recorded and the video will be uploaded to GEDI's YouTube channel. So now I'd like to turn it over to our guests to introduce themselves. So thanks very much for joining today. Let's start with you, Scott, for you to introduce yourself.
Great, thanks Bridget, and thanks for the opportunity to speak with everybody today, and also thank you for the audience's time and interest in this discussion. I've been the Director of Commercialization here at the university for about 14 years now. Previously, my career spanned technical marketing, business development roles in the chemical industry, water treatment industry, and I was a co-founder in a clean tech startup many years ago now. Graduated with a BSc in chemistry from McMaster, and subsequently earned my MBA from Wayne State University in Detroit, Michigan. I always had a curious appetite about the natural world and scientific phenomenon, I suppose, but also had a more pragmatic interest in business-oriented challenges. So I guess after bouncing around in various technical and business roles in the early part of my career, once I discovered the profession of technology transfer, I've ever since been rooted to the challenge of translating technological innovation to commercial business opportunity. I actually feel quite fortunate to work with many preeminent researchers at the university and to play a role in facilitating the translation of their ideas into commercial products and services, of course, with their intended benefits to society and our economy. And I look forward to this discussion this afternoon.
Thanks very much, Scott. That's great. So Evelyn, over to you to introduce yourself and introduce Evercloak.
Thanks, Bridget. It's really nice to be here. Thanks again for the audience for joining us. So my name is Evelyn Allen. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Evercloak. Evercloak, we incorporated just over 2 years ago. Before that, my role has spanned across the clean tech space, from working as a design engineer, consultant engineer, and then more recently just developing strategic partnerships between companies and universities and trying to facilitate helping get innovation off the shelf and into the hands of the end users. And my background, I have an undergraduate degree in engineering physics and a master's in environmental engineering, and I've always really been interested in finding problems in industry and ways to help solve those, and really excited to be here today and to have started Evercloak with working closely with the University of Waterloo to bring a really transformative technology to the market.
Great, thank you. I think your video might be just recycling. Yeah, you're back. That's fantastic, Evelyn. Thank you. So that's perfect segue and exciting topic for today, actually. So I'm really excited to chat with you. So maybe, Scott, let's start with the basics. So what is WatCO, and how do you facilitate commercialization of your IP assets?
Okay, I think probably before wading into the specifics of our office, which is the Waterloo Commercialization Office, or otherwise known as WatCO, I think it's maybe important to highlight that the university's IP policy has been credited as being one of the several factors contributing to more of our sort of entrepreneurial notoriety and success, and also the creation of a campus culture that supports innovation and knowledge translation. So for many of you, you may be aware that Waterloo has a creator-owned IP policy, which means inventors at the University of Waterloo own the fruits of their efforts without any encumbrance, without any requirement to share anything back to the university. And they enjoy the full rights of ownership to the inventive ideas that they come up with. There's some restrictions to that, of course, if they enter into sponsored research agreements with companies. Typically, a company will have some rights to negotiate some access to use the IP, depending on what the situation is. But generally, it's a creator-owned environment, and there are some exceptions, of course, to accommodate sponsored researchers. I guess our philosophy is that this kind of IP policy attracts a more entrepreneurial or maybe business-friendly researcher, and that incentive is the best motivator to stimulate commercialization. Faculty members are very busy. They have many sort of competing draws on their time, but affording them the maximum ownership rights and the maximum benefits is an incentive that helps to root them and motivate them to pursue commercialization. And I guess as a consequence of this, and it's one factor of many at the university, but as a consequence of this IP policy, at least in part, we've been widely acknowledged as the most entrepreneurial research environment in Canada. We've been designated Canada's most innovative university for 28 years in a row by Maclean's magazine. Specifically, the Waterloo Commercialization Office has a mandate to identify, protect, and facilitate commercialization of IP arising primarily from the research engine on campus. So most of our clients would be the research faculty and the graduate students, postdocs, PhDs, master's students to some extent. Given our creator-owned IP policy, engagement with WatCO is completely voluntary. As you can imagine, many researchers are not entrepreneurial oriented in nature or have the requisite time to lead their own commercialization effort. Thus, for a significant portion of the campus community, voluntarily working with WatCO, represents a more viable pathway forward to facilitate commercialization of their ideas. Our relationship with clients is generally cemented via partnership agreement where they assign IP rights formally to the institution. And in exchange for that, we take on the costs and efforts to protect and commercialize the IP. And we have a 75-25 revenue split, 75% to the inventors, 25% to the institution. And that's in the context of a licensing transaction, so that's a revenue split. If it's a startup opportunity, then we have a slightly different model. Our typical equity position in a startup is 5% equity with some non-dilutive protection included in that configuration. Our team is comprised of 7 professionals with engineering and physical science backgrounds primarily, as well in most instances a business designation, either an MBA, an MBET, or some other business designation, as well as a minimum of 6 years private sector experience. The reason I mention that is because our team is uniquely positioned to bridge the academic and business worlds, and thus we need to be able to speak the language between the two divides in order to bridge mutually acceptable transactional deal flow. As part of our service, of course, we manage all intellectual property matters, which includes covering the cost of patents and also managing the administration of IP activities, which can be quite complicated in its own right. As you can imagine, we work with a lot of range of researchers who have, quite a common range of technical maturity. Quite often, what we see in the way of technologies are very early rudimentary prototyping or validation has occurred. It's usually the case that we need to demonstrate to potential licensees or seed investors that the technology actually works in a more realistic use case, or is optimized, or that it will scale. So, to build a box with some lights on it blinking so it actually looks like a product and not something that's jerry-rigged up in a lab. Thus, our team focuses on trying to de-risk these opportunities by applying to certain non-dilutive government funding programs that will support advanced prototyping, demonstration projects, and just to advance commercial readiness to the next level of hopefully private sector engagement. Lastly, we devise the appropriate commercialization strategy to execute, whether that's licensing strategy or startup strategy. And that depends on whether technology is more incremental or whether it's more disruptive in nature. So that gives you a kind of a snapshot of our activities.
Thank you. That's really an excellent overview. Thank you. That was wonderful. So following on from that, Scott, so how does an entrepreneur or a company actually tap into some of that intellectual wealth that WatCO represents?
Well, there's a number of ways in which the outside world can engage with our group. I would suggest as a first off just to check out our website. And if you just search WatCO on the UW homepage, you'll get to our landing spot. We have a listing of all of the most of the IP that we are currently managing. It's refreshed frequently, but it's not always up to date. But it's a good representation of what we have. And if you see something there, just reach out for a conversation to discuss your interests, whether it be regarding a specific technology or just have a more general discussion. If you're an entrepreneur and you're interested in leading a startup effort, as I mentioned before, many of our creative teams don't have entrepreneurial aspirations. Thus, we are often seeking out potential management talent to match up with our various creative teams. It's, for instance, not unusual for us to be contacted by experienced entrepreneurs who have exited their own company, but still feel they have another gig in them to create, and they want to continue on with a new adventure, and they have the requisite experience to support that. Typically, these are usually higher net worth individuals and often alumni who don't have an immediate need for salary, but they're amenable to working with a startup team based on equity compensation against achieving startup milestones, say, developing a business plan, securing first customers, raising the first financing, of course, after which, if there's funding, you can draw a salary, of course. And if you're a company, then from a company perspective, understanding your product pipeline allows us to match you up with IP in our portfolio, or in some instances to match you up with researchers working in the thematic areas of interest. There are many government programs available to match industry partner funding for developing technologies or IP in the areas of your interest. So that gives you a flavor of some ways in which you can engage with our team.
Thank you. So following on to that, then, could you provide an example of some IP that WatCO has represented that's turned into something valuable, and maybe an example of how that was done? And I'll start with you, Scott, but then it's a perfect segue into Evelyn and her whole success story with Evercloak. So I'll start with you, Scott.
Sure. Well, we do about 2 to 3 what I call tough tech startups per year, and although that may not sound like a lot, one needs to consider the kind of heavy lifting involved in the process that I just kind of previously outlined. Research-derived inventions are quite often very early. They need that significant support to move towards commercial readiness. Thus, our pipeline is comprised of very early, mid, and late stages of maturity. And as far as examples, aside from Evercloak, of course, some of the examples of our portfolio, maybe some names that folks on the line may be aware of. SimWave is one of our companies. It's a real-time video quality monitoring company. It just recently won its second Emmy Award, which was quite exciting for the company. KA Imaging is a disruptive X-ray imaging company. They've just recently, in the last 6 months, secured both FDA and Health Canada approval. Tyrmer is a company that's focused on rubber recycling and upgrading. They've won numerous sustainability awards and have secured numerous global licenses. Everbond is a company that works in the anti-corrosive and other advanced coating space, and they recently secured $1 million development contract with a prospective customer. Glove Systems is a construction fabrication virtualization software company, for lack of a better description, I suppose, and they're beta prototype testing with prospective customers at this time. Luminero is a neurological disease imaging diagnostic company, currently targeting Alzheimer's patients for their first target audience, and plans to move to clinical testing with their prototype instrument. And a more recent company, which I'd like to give a plug for, is a company called Celovy. That's just been recently launched. It's a nanomaterials company targeting perfluoroalkyl substances, or PFAS, which is an emerging priority water contaminant. So as you can see, those are some examples, and we do sort of range over lots of different thematic areas, and they're all sort of lot of heavy lifting involved in each of those.
No, that's fantastic. Thank you. And it's I'm happy to be able to say we featured SimWave, KA Imaging, and upcoming will be glove systems on these GEDI Exchange webinars. So nice to see the tie-in there. So Evelyn, over to you. And thank you, Scott, for all that great information about WatCO. So how does what Scott said tie into your Evercloak story? And I guess that will segue into my next main question, which is really, you know, after you acquired the IP rights from WatCO, how did you really go to market with technology and become a commercial success? So it's essentially telling your story. I think you might be on mute.
That's better. Thanks, Bridget, and thanks, Scott. You gave a really great overview of how WatCO works. So my story and Evercloak's story. So, you know, I was at the time looking for something new and challenging to do, and I've always dreamt of having my own company at some point. And I came across a funding call specifically dedicated to help support women in clean tech, and it was enough support really to take a leap and do this. And I thought I could win this, and I think I can get the support and start a company. And though was a technology, because I was not an inventor. And so I approached Scott and I said, Scott, look at this. Would you, this looks like an amazing opportunity. Would you consider supporting me in this application for this funding to start a company? And he was very, really encouraging and allowed me to kind of look through a lot of their clean tech, WatCO's clean tech patent portfolio. And I was able to identify a technology that I thought was very disruptive, fit really well with my background, and where I had seen a lot of industry need for this type of technology. And so for those of you not in the line, Evercloak is an advanced material innovation company, and we're focused right now on manufacturing graphene-based membranes to help dehumidify air and make building cooling up to 50% more energy efficient. Although it's a platform technology, and we can do lots of other coding applications in the future as well. And so my story with working with WatCO and Scott, we were able to successfully submit an application for this program. I was selected as a finalist for this national competition, which really was a springboard for Evercloak, and really incremental in that success was the support that WatCO gave us and the ability for me to license this technology into our company Evercloak as kind of our core initial IP.
Well, it's a really great story. So thank you so much for sharing that. So, you know, how does and maybe I'll start with you, Evelyn. So, like, how does continuing to partner with the university make a difference to your company? I think you've got some pretty strong ties to the university, and you know, maybe you can talk about this from an Evercloak perspective.
Yeah, that'd be great. So my co-founder, Dr. Michael Pope, he's a faculty member in the university at the University of Waterloo in the engineering. And through him and others, we've been able to really take advantage of really the one of the biggest benefits of being closely to the University of Waterloo is the talent. So we've been securing co-ops, 3 to 4 co-ops per term that have moved into longer term roles. We have been doing a lot of industry partnerships with the university. So working and leveraging some of the funding programs like MyTax to be able to have, leading edge graduate students, PhDs, postdocs working on Evercloak projects. And because of the nature of the University of Waterloo's IP policy, we're able to own that IP, which is also really important to the company. And building that IP portfolio that is investable and brings value to our company. So that's been a really key component. And through those type of collaborations, we also get access to a lot of the lab space, which otherwise would be quite expensive and hard to access. We had to build it ourselves if we were in that early stage startup.
Excellent. That's fantastic, Evelyn. Congratulations on all the successes you've had to date. It's quite exciting. I know you've had a lot of awards and recognition along the way, so kudos to you. I wonder, just in the last minute or two, Scott, back over to you. Could you give an example or a couple of examples of some IP in the WatCO portfolio, that is ready for commercialization? There might be folks on the line interested, or some who might want to spread the word. Oh, I think you might be on mute, Scott.
Let me just see.
There you go.
Oh, okay, great, thank you. Well, we have a wide range of projects in our portfolio. you know, we never know what's going to walk today through the door in any given day. One day it's groundwater, next day it's quantum computing. So we have a wide range, but I can sort of outline some thematic areas that we have projects with technology, like cybersecurity, for instance. We have an RFID tag technology that's secure and enables that can be used in things such as anti-counterfeiting applications, and we also have some biometrics IP in that particular space. IoT, Internet of Things. We have a number of different millimeter and terahertz wave sensors. We have some passive Wi-Fi technology. It's quite interesting. In the artificial intelligence space, we have some predictive analytics software, which has been validated in 1 or 2 use cases. And we also have quite an interesting bioanalytics software program for first principles drug discovery, which is also interesting. In telecommunications, we have directive antenna systems for 5G networks. Nanotechnology, we have solar and LED advanced materials, very unique properties, higher performance, lower cost, and higher efficiencies. So that kind of gives you a snapshot, Bridget, of some of the things that we have, but the best place to look is on our landing spot on our webpage. All of our entire portfolio is accessible there for people to sort of scan and peruse.
Well, thanks, Scott. That's a big portfolio. So all the entrepreneurs on the line watching the webinar, and or even future watching the tape for the recording of this video, should reach out to Scott and WatCO and have a look at the webpage. So I'm so sorry to have to stop now, Evelyn and Scott, and sorry to have to, you know, it's such an interesting discussion. I find it fascinating. I'm sure so many on the watching this will find it fascinating as well. So I wish we could continue to chat, but we're going to move to the Q&A session now that came in. So I want to thank you both so much. Please obviously stay on for the Q&A. You know, and again, your insights were just incredible, and I hope that the audience got as much out of it as I know I did. So over to the Q&A. Thanks to the audience, some questions have come in, and both Scott and Evelyn, you're welcome to contribute to the discussion of the questions. We'll try and keep it somewhat short just to allow for a maximum number of questions. And I have the first one, and it's actually for you, Evelyn. So I'll direct this first one to you. It came in through the webinar registration process. So on a scale from 1 to 10, with 1 being low, how would you rate Canada's funding support for new businesses? And to that, I would add the broader question of support in general, such as the regulatory and IP environment, since those factors can be more important than funding. And what about the other levels of government?
Thanks, Bridget. And I just listening to that question, I'm not sure broader funding in terms of VC funding as well, or just more government grants and funding. But to us, I kind of put it at a 7. We've had a lot of success with securing funding as an early stage startup. And I think it's very dependent though on your sector and the type of technology that you're in. Right now, we're really focused on clean. As you know, there's been a lot of attention in the climate change and support for these technologies, and so we've been very fortunate. And we've had similar levels of funding from kind of federal and provincial supports, so we've been very fortunate that way.
Do you see any, actually, do you see any changes or improvements on the way in the world you're working in?
Yeah, I've been in the funding space for a long time, even prior to Evercloak, for the past 10 years. So I've seen, the funding cycles go up and down, and right now, with interest in, at least for our sector, the climate tech and clean tech, we're seeing more and more support coming this way. A lot of kind of funding programs becoming more robust, and even IP. There's been more and more support for IP. So when we first started, it was quite hard to get funding to support IP costs, and that's for the deep tech companies like ours, it's a very critical component to building successful businesses. And I'm seeing even over the past 3 years, we've seen more and more funding programs enable IP costs as well, which has been really important to us.
Okay, thank you. That's very interesting. So just another question came in through the registration system, and it's actually would be for me. So what is GEDI? So I actually recommend that that whoever, I don't know who asked the question, hopefully they did join the webinar, but if you can stay on after the Q&A session ends, we actually rerun a very short video, 5 minutes or less, that is an introductory video to GEDI and the GEDI Exchange, and it explains all about it. So stay tuned. So the next question that came in, actually it's for Evelyn again. So what would you say the biggest challenges were over the last 2 years? And can you speak to any of the key learnings that from overcoming these challenges?
Yeah, I think you know, companies have all different variety of challenges, but for us, because we're a platform technology, we can have different inks and a variety of different high performance coatings. To me, from the very beginning, the challenge has been finding the product market fit and staying focused. When there's so many opportunities and so many markets that you can have an opportunity in, where do you put your resources as a startup? And so lessons learned there, I think we've pivoted probably 2 or 3 times already just from our product market fit, because we've been able to re-identify. So I think learnings would be maybe just to go through that process faster. I know doing that already, but even more so, I would go back and try to do that more quickly to get to a product market fit and doing the right customer discovery to make sure that this is in fact the best opportunity for your initial path forward.
Right. Thank you. That makes a lot of sense. So again, with Evelyn, so you talked about Evercloak's technology being a platform technology. You just mentioned that, and so can you speak through that a little bit more? So while maybe highlighting what you see the next year or two looking like for Evercloak?
Yeah. So we have, you know, our core focus is on making membranes air dehumidification, but at the same time, we have R&D taking place in the background where we see our growth markets and other opportunities to validate other markets. So in the next year, we're still very focused on our initial offering and making that successful, but we are also making sure that we have some support where we can to round out some of the other areas that we're looking at.
Thanks. So Scott, over to you for a question. Does WatCO provide strategic support to the portfolio under your care that helps detect trends in startup focus, or how to combine several ideas and then link to employment opportunities? I realize you may be constrained to the Waterloo IP or patents.
Yeah, I think that is the sort of the rate limiting step, is that we are constrained to innovations that had their genesis at Waterloo. So we do look for opportunities to combine technologies in our portfolio to look for synergies. So there's greater value creation by bundling 1 or 2 or more things together. That doesn't often present itself, but we certainly do look at that. And we also do quite a bit of discovery in the early stages of our involvement with the technology by engaging with consultants to do market studies and those kinds of things. So, you know, because we see a lot of different market spaces and we do a lot of these market studies, we do have a sense of the trends and you know, where sort of application spaces might be hotter or not. As I say, we are all over the place. We're not, we have technology there, so it's hard to have a sort of a finger on the pulse on all the trends in the sectors. But we do have a generally good sense of what areas are hot and which areas are maybe waning.
Okay, thank you. So thanks very much. One last question came in, and it's really something I'll address. One of the GEDI Exchange members, which is a network itself, it's the CEO peer-to-peer. It represents about 450 scale-up CEOs, is asking how their network can be leveraged alongside of GEDI's to tap into talent and IP at the university, you know, through WatCO, the university alumni, and even 3 million Canadian expats. They're recently described in a book called Planet Canada. So it is a really interesting and broad question. I think discussing how to harness these type of network effects or this type of network effect, it's really complex and probably will take a good bit longer to address than we have time here today. But we're actually featuring the CEO peer-to-peer as well as the Nuclear Innovation Institute, which is another network, in an upcoming GEDI Exchange webinar. So I encourage folks interested in that to join that webinar coming up. So with this, we need to wrap up. We have 1 minute left. So I just want to give a very big thank you to the audience for joining us, and a huge thank you to our guests, Evelyn Allen from Evercloak and Scott Inwood from WatCO. Your insights and experience and expertise were very much appreciated. If anyone here joining us today would like to exchange some thoughts with Evercloak or WatCO, please let me know. Your contact info won't be shared outside of the university, and we'll make sure to make introductions only at your request. So if you have any further questions, or maybe you heard something today that intrigued you to explore further, please reach out to me. I'm Bridget Maloney. You can find my email on the GEDI homepage where you registered for the event. And now our next webinar, we'll have a slide to be able to show you. An upcoming webinar is on March 23rd, and we're going to be discussing augmented reality and digital twins, and with glove systems and exo insights. So like this webinar, we just register at UWaterloo/GEDI, uwaterloo.ca/GEDI/events as shown on your screen. And you'll receive a link to the March webinar after today's session ends, actually. So we'll also share news and events on GEDI's LinkedIn and Twitter. So please sign up to these GEDI's socials, and you'll receive our latest news. So look forward to seeing you then. This closes the regular part of our session for today. But as I mentioned during the Q&A, if anyone can stay on for 5 more minutes, there's a very short video to learn about GEDI and the GEDI Exchange at the University of Waterloo. So thank you very much, everybody, and have a great day. Bye. Welcome. My name is Bridget Maloney, and I'm GEDI's Managing Director. GEDI is the gateway for enterprises to discover innovation, established here at the University of Waterloo. It's the university's corporate engagement office. First, some quick facts about this great institution. UWaterloo is committed to being a global powerhouse for commercializing research, developing new enterprises, and supporting business growth. GEDI helps companies worldwide explore the innovative work, unique initiatives, and multitude of activities underway at our university, and to develop long-lasting and mutually beneficial university-company partnerships. GEDI is a door into the university for companies that want to engage across research, technology development via our commercialization office, hiring, corporate education, startups, strategic giving, joint R&D labs. It could also include establishing a partner suite at GEDI, increased profile on campus, and more. And the entire university ecosystem to uncover and highlight all of the research and activities that could support your company, working with all of the university's 6 faculties, its schools, research centers and institutes, startups, and more. We will bring to your attention UWaterloo's full research and innovation capacity as it aligns with your company. We'll introduce you to the right people and strategically manage activities, building toward a long-term, mutually beneficial and successful partnership. Any company can connect with the university through GEDI. Navigating a university can be daunting and confusing. We'll help uncover the university's full innovation capacity in a curated manner for you. We'll help to simplify your interaction with the university. For example, we understand the university's structure and functioning when it comes to partnerships with companies. GEDI represents the entire university when it creates connections for a company like yours. We assess and consider the elements of the potential collaboration prior to connecting with all relevant people at the university. Now let me introduce the Exchange. The GEDI Exchange is a program run by GEDI. GEDI Exchange is an ecosystem that fosters high-value interaction among principally UWaterloo affiliated startups and scale-ups, with GEDI's large corporate partners, and with our researchers and technologies. We make introductions among Exchange members. We deliver programming of interest to our members, such as webinars that spotlight companies who are members of the Exchange and their technologies. GEDI Exchange is free to join for startups and scale-ups. The Exchange provides a platform for new partnerships to form among companies and with the university. Benefits of the exchange can include the following. As the Corporate Engagement Office of the University, GEDI works closely with companies of all sizes and with university research and other stakeholders to foster introductions and develop mutually beneficial partnerships. Whether we're all working remotely or in person, we need connections with each other to uncover collaboration opportunities that really advance the mission of both organizations. GEDI and the GEDI Exchange promote these connections between the university and companies and among companies of all sizes so that win-win collaborations are realized. Connect with GEDI, and an experienced client manager will work with you to take a comprehensive approach to understanding your company's business, its needs, and goals. I look forward to hearing from you if you'd like to learn more.